Being at home right away, and then there's stuff to do at home. Baruch Hashem. Okay, we're comparing now as we slide towards the end of the Maimer. The rest of the Maimer, we learned the Maimer's done in terms of what the Rebbe wants to teach us now, but now he wants to connect it to Yud Beis Tammuz and Yud Tes Kislev and explain the level of Or that was revealed on those holidays. As we just said, the last thing we read in that first short little paragraph on Yud Gimel, on page Shin Chaf Hei, so the Rebbe said, he's now going to explain this, that out of darkness comes a higher level of light. The higher level of light that came as a result of the stories of Yud Tes Kislev, the imprisonment of the Alter Rebbe, and Yud Beis Tammuz, the imprisonment of the previous Rebbe. The greater light that emerged from that, the Rebbe says, after we now know what this means, and we're quite taken by what the Rebbe says, is the revelation of Atzmos Ein Sof, but obviously not in a way that brings about the Binyan Adayan. But that level of light was drawn down into the world to make the world a much healthier place. And obviously, these two events are extremely important in the whole process of bringing Mashiach. Yud Tes Kislev, Yud Beis Tammuz. V'yesh leimar, the Zeu Geula, the Yud Tes Kislev, Yud Beis Tammuz. The redemption of those days, Nes Galui L'mayla Min HaTeva, was a revealed miracle beyond nature. Which of those two is more obviously a miracle depends on your historical perspective, right? Certainly we understand that someone who was arrested by the Soviets and given a death sentence doesn't ever show up again. But the Frierdiker Rebbe did. So that's rather astounding. By the Alter Rebbe also, the Alter Rebbe discussed in a letter that he wrote to Chassidim, certain older Chassidim, after he got out of jail, how even the ministers in the government were shocked that he got out alive. Meaning that they were talking about the incredible miracle that happened to this Jewish rabbi because he was taken away in the black carriage. So the black carriage means you're not coming back in those days, right? He came back. So that was rather obviously a miracle, right? Meaning things that we've seen in the last 2 weeks. So it's not makas dam. It's not that the water coming out of your tap is turning into blood a week after God said that's going to happen. But you'd have to be rather blind not to see that these events were somewhat miraculous, right? That this was obviously the hand of God was involved in what was going on because it was just so good. Okay. Someone could theoretically explain it in a different way. And that's what's interesting about what the Rebbe is about to say about Yud Beis Tammuz and Yud Tes Kislev. On one hand, it was openly miraculous because things happened that just don't happen. And they happen to very holy people. V'afal Pikein, nevertheless, Haya Nes Meluvish B'Teva. But the Nes was clothed in nature. Our victory that was just happened, well, it was rather miraculous, but it was planes and soldiers, and, it was all clothed in nature. It's not that someone just snapped their fingers and Iran disappeared. No, all sorts of things had to happen. But it's interesting, those things all happened exactly the way they were supposed to happen in just a rather spectacular way. I don't know, maybe we talked about it, I'm not sure whether we talked about it. But that first night when they killed, 15 guys in their vans. So how'd they get those guys? You know how they got those guys? They had a missile, an American missile. That's one of the problems with our deal with America. It's good for us, but it's bad for us. When America gives us all this money, and they give us a lot of money, why do they give us this money? Well, we have to buy American armaments with the money that they give us. Now, we need those armaments, so they're giving us those armaments, which is very, very good. But we have to buy it, much of the money they give us, foreign aid, well, we have to spend it in America buying the armaments that we buy, which means that our ability to develop our own is very limited. We don't have the resources, and we don't have the need, because in the meantime, they're giving it to us, selling it to us. I mean, not really. They're giving us the money, then we're buying it. But that's in their interest, because they don't want us to develop too much, because then they'll lose the business. Right? So they're helping their economy a lot by pumping a couple of $1 billion into their economy by virtue of giving us the money, which we then put back in the American economy. Right? Okay, so it's a win-win, we get it, but it does mean we're not producing our own. So if a guy like Biden comes along and says, I'm not giving you anymore, during that period, we did develop a bunch of stuff that was actually very useful. But the bomb comes within 1.5 meters. It's accurate to 1.5 meters. Now, when you're trying to kill someone in their bed, 1.5 meters, if you miss, you don't get it. You blow up the room. You might blow up his wife's mirror, but you don't necessarily get him. So how did they get them? They got every single one of them. How did they get them? Well, you know those robots that clean houses? They go around the house and they clean, and when they finish cleaning, what do? They go back to they have a chip that sends them back to the place where they came from. Somehow, obviously with the people on the ground who obviously helped this happen, a lot of Iranians must have given an incredible amount of information to help this all happen, and evidently they weren't just giving information, they were helping on the ground. Every one of those guys had put somewhere, under his bed, that homing device. That chip was under his bed. So that missile was going home, like that robot goes back to its, and so they hit the beds. Now how did they get them there? They got them there in every single one of those guys. How did they get them there? Well, I guess some electrician came to fix the electricity. And in a spare moment, when he was supposed to be in the bathroom, put a thing under the bed of the guy. But they got every one of those guys that way. How did we pull that off? That's just crazy. Okay, so anybody with a little sensitivity will say, well, there's a certain miraculous aspect to that whole event. It's Lubavitch and Teva, but it certainly has its miracle side, especially, Mela, you're successful 5 out of 15. I don't know how many guys there were, but there were quite a few. 15 out of every single one of them. Got them all. Didn't miss anybody. Okay. If that's not help from above, I don't know what is. But it was Lubavitch B'Teva. Had to put the thing there, and the bomb had to go, and it had to get through the window. And if you saw those buildings, so the rest of the building is fine. There's just one blown out window in the side of the building, and the missile goes through the window and blew it up. That's how we blew up, this was years ago, 1981. So they blew up the Iraqi nuclear reactor. And the Iraqis were doing the same thing as so Begin did it. That was much more low tech, but the bomb that we sent was a bomb that had to go in the window. You couldn't drop a bomb on top of it because it would just bounce off the way they had built it. So they had to build a bomb that go into the window and blow it up from the inside out, which is what they did. And Begin talked about the miracle of it, because Begin talked that way. Vafo Pikin ayad neis Lubavitch B'Teva. Vagam, and so by the Alter Rebbe and the Friedrich Rebbe also. There were diplomatic things happening for the Friedrich Rebbe, the Americans. We talked about last night in the Farbrengen, how he got out of Europe, right? So also when the Rebbe was in jail, the Americans were putting pressure on the Russians to let this Jewish saint out of jail, etc. Okay, that was all happening, but the Russians didn't do those sort of things, right? If you had a death sentence, you died. Rav Nanas, who we mentioned yesterday, I think. So Rav Nanas told me that I think 90%. I think that's the number. 90% of the students that he learned in yeshiva with died in Stalin's camps. They're from Jews. They wouldn't stop being from Jews. They opened up little yeshivas under the guidance of the Friedrich Rebbe, and they were captured, and they were sent to Siberia, and they died there. 90%. He was also sent to Siberia. He just lived. He was there for 20 years, and he got out alive. But 90% of the guys he learned in yeshiva with died. None of them were Michal Shabbos. None of them stopped Yiddishkeit, but 90% of them died. Because that's what happened. But the Friedrich Rebbe got out. Now they wanted the Friedrich Rebbe more than anybody else, because they knew he was the head of it. He was the Aran de Kedusha. Right? The head of it all. And they knew that if they get him, there'll be a. What interesting enough, what they even when they let him out of jail, they made it impossible for him to run things from Russia. So the Rebbe left Russia a few years later. They were harassing him so much that it was impossible for him to run anything. So he left. But they didn't kill him, which is miraculous. Vagam shanes nislavish b'teva. And even though the nes was clothed in nature, and it was in such a way but the nature didn't hide the miracle. Just like we're talking about now. So what we did was obviously Lubavitch and Teva. It was all done naturally. Real planes, real bombs, real people. Okay. But that Teva didn't hide the miraculous part of it. Okay, so too by the Rebbe. It was all done naturally. And they when he got out of jail, he didn't just go, and all of a sudden disappear and show up in somewhere else in Russia. Right? It's interesting because one of the Chassidim asked the Alter Rebbe, why didn't you just burn down Petersburg? You're in jail there. Okay, so now before you get there, or even though you're in jail, why don't you just burn it all down? Now I guess telling him, do some Rebbish stuff. Not the Rebbe said, no, it's not the way we do it. So it all happened. Al pi teva, the Russians changed their mind, and they did it. Okay. But everybody understood it was miraculous. Until even simple people saw Shazan Nes Galui. This is a revealed Nes, and that line the Rebbe is saying is based on the letter that I mentioned earlier that the Alter Rebbe wrote. That ministers were discussing among the Alter Rebbe testified to the fact that the ministers were discussing amongst themselves the miraculous fact that this Jewish rabbi got out of jail, wasn't killed. They just couldn't believe that this happened. Because these things just didn't happen under the Tsar. It just never happened. Ki shoresh hateva, the source of nature, Mishem Elokim, Mamale. What level of godly reality is directly responsible for the existence of what you and I call nature? Because what does nature seem to do? Nature seems to hide godliness, right? The way the world works, the world has this chip in it, and it acts a certain way, and we call that nature. And that seems to preclude the hand of God in everyday activity. Now, you and I know that it doesn't, right? But okay, we say it, but it certainly seems to, and it's reasonable for someone to understand things. There's events they can't explain, okay, and sometimes they go to ridiculous lengths to explain obviously miraculous events in natural ways. Okay, we say it. But in general, most things that happen because that's the way the world works. Right? And that's called nature. And what level of Elokim is responsible for that? Malchus, Elokim. And Elokim is a word, and this is something that's in V'yadai Damask at great length, which again, I was thinking we might learn it in the summer, I'm not sure. Elokim is the source of plurality. The word itself is a plural word. Right? When it's conjugated Elokim Kadoshim, holy God. It's not gods, God forbid. But it's conjugated in the plural. Why? Well, because it's a plural word. Why is it a plural word? Because it's that aspect of the Kadosh Baruch Hu that's responsible for multiplicity, for plurality. What emerges from Shem Elokim, so to speak? Shem Elokim is the source of the kelim, of the vessels that allow for differentiated reality to exist. Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei is the source of the light. What's the light? One. The light out here, even physical light. Okay. But when it hits our holy pink book, the Kli, all of a sudden, a specific expression of light is revealed to you and I. When we talk about godly light, we're not talking about it reflecting off the Kli. What does this Kli do to light? In physics, what does it actually do? It reflects the pink of the light and absorbs all the other colors. It doesn't let you see the other colors. It absorbs them. Okay, what's this doing? Absorbing all the color and not allowing you to see any color. What's this doing? Reflecting all the light, which also doesn't allow you to see any color. The light that's hitting this is exactly the same as the light that's hitting this. Oops. Right? True. Here. See that? Well, here, look at that. Right? So I understand. This is pink. The pink light's just down here. And if I were to move aside, then my shirt would turn pink if I move over there? No. What's happening? The light, which out here can express itself in an infinite amount of ways, when it hits this kli, and again, when we're talking about physical light, we're talking about it reflecting off the kli, not being clothed in the kli. When we talk about godly light, we're talking about it being clothed in the vessel and giving the vessel vitality and existence and vitality. Right? Okay. But this light, the light that's shining off here, hits this kli. This kli defines how that light will be revealed to your eyes as it smashes into your eyeball at 186,000 miles per second. Why it doesn't hurt, I'm not sure. We wear glasses just in case. No, we don't want to get smashed too hard so it gets... But these guys, I don't know, they're tough, man. They did right straight on the eyeball. I'll take it. Okay, so that light is flying back at us at 186,000 miles per second, which is faster than any of us can run. But this light's pink. It's not the light's pink. The pink in the light is being reflected, and the no color of the light is being reflected by this, because this thing is reflecting the light in its totality. So to speak, it's white, which theoretically isn't a color. We sort of call it a color, but it's not really a color, right? White and black. I think they call them abstracts. I'm not sure. But what's this doing? It's absorbing all of the light. That's why this tends to be hotter in the summer. That's why we walk around in black, because you should suffer if you're religious. You like to suffer for God. I'm glad we walk around in black, because I would feel sort of funny walking around in a white suit all day. A white suit with a black shirt. We'd look like a chassid in a negative. So we don't want that. Okay. So that's the way physical light works. And why does physical light work that way? Physical light works that way so that you and I can understand something about godly light, right? And why the Eibishter did it that way. Right? He didn't have to. Okay, so the shurish of that nature that you and I experience so powerfully is Shem Elokim, which is Or Mamale, the light that's affected by Kalim and reveals itself in line with those Kalim. V'shorish HaNisim, and the source of the miracles, Hu Mishem Havaya, Sevev, right? Infinite light, not limited by Kalim. What does Kadosh Baruch Hu tell Moshe Rabbeinu at the beginning of the whole story in Mitzrayim? That Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei is going to be revealed in this story. What does Paro say? Who's Yud Kei Vav Kei? Meaning Paro has any problem with the fact that there are, he'll call them deities, but that there's some spiritual power that's responsible for natural. No, they have a God for this and 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 a God for this, right? No problem. So we have one. They have 12. Say them. Well, I mean, obviously it's a rather serious difference, but what do we understand? That level of godliness that is allowing for nature is just an aspect of the Eibishter that allows reality to be revealed that way. But so to speak, right? The mashal that's often brought is that it's not that nature hiding the Eibishter is not like that. This is nature, and I get to be God in this. This is the fun part. Right? No. Nature hiding God is that. What's this? It's also me. This is more revealed me. That's why it's called panim. If you see this, you know a lot about me. Is he a happy person? Is he sad? Right now, is he happy, sad? You can usually tell in general, is there a sparkle in the face, or does the person look depressed? But at this particular moment, you can also see someone's face. Jewish history was based on one little Jew in jail noticing two nasty goyim were having a bad day, and he asked them, "Are you guys all right?" And they said, "Well, we had these disturbing dreams last night." "No, tell me about it. Maybe I can help you." Because of that, Jewish history changed. Yosef ended up being the prime minister of Egypt, and the rest is literally history. Okay. Just because he noticed their faces. Because a face is panemius, it's who you are. Yes? What's the guy doing? Smiling or growling? I don't know. Can't tell. But it's not that this isn't me. This is as much me as this. Okay, so to Elohim. Elohim is the Eibishter hiding himself, so to speak. The facade of nature, which, so to speak, hides God, but it doesn't really hide God. It's just the Eibishter. It's the Eibishter hiding himself. That's Shem Elohim, Tzimtzum. The Kaven, since Shabahagul. Wait, when do we finish? 10 after, I think. When did it say? 10 after? Quarter after? Do you remember? Yeah. Can you look on the app and see when we're supposed to finish? Because you know me, I like to. 9:10. Okay, so we'll do our best to finish at 9:10. I'm programmed to speak for an hour. It's a problem. I'll have to. Maybe I'll let you guys go and I'll just talk to myself for another 20 minutes or something. Baruch Hashem, I'm not saying this about you guys, but there are certain classes that you feel like you're talking to yourself. This is not one of them in any way, shape, or form. But every teacher's experienced classes like that, where basically you're just talking to yourself. So every now and then you can say something absolutely outlandish, and you see if anybody responds. Oh, you're still here. You're actually listening here. Okay. Since in these states of Gula, the Gula of the Alter Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe, there was a revelation of Atzmus Ein Sof Shelamayla Miseviv Umamale. So therefore, what could happen? That level of light, Hakoilel Umechaber Es Shneim. This is something the Rebbe hasn't said yet, but it's been. I mean, we've had to explain everything based on this, but the Rebbe hasn't said it explicitly. That the level of Or Ein Sof is that level that contains within it and includes within it both the levels of Sevev and Mamale, meaning the way we've been saying it up until now is infinite and finite. Therefore, the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Lochein Haisa Geula Ba'if, and therefore the Geula was an expression of both. Shanes v'hateva nischabru yachad, that the nes, which was obvious, and the teva, which was also obvious. This obviously happened to LP Teva, meaning the Russians signed documents. It all worked the way it was supposed to work. The Frierdiker Rebbe couldn't get. They said you're going free on Yud Beis Tammuz, which was just every step of the way. A death penalty commuted to 10 years in Siberia. 10 years in Siberia commuted to 3 years in internal exile in Kostroma. 9 days in Kostroma, you can go home. Okay, but interestingly enough, those 9 days in Kostroma, why was it 9 and not 8? Or well, actually it was 10 and not 9. Because Yud Beis Tammuz was that, not because it was Yud Beis Tammuz, they hadn't done that yet, hadn't started celebrating Yud Beis Tammuz. Yud Beis Tammuz was a holiday in Russia, and so they couldn't sign to fill out the papers, and so the Rebbe had to wait for the next day for the bureaucrats to fill out the papers and let him free. So it's all happening in Teva. But it's absolutely miraculous. Because this doesn't happen. And it's rather obvious that the Eibishter wants the Rebbe alive in Olam Hazeh so the Rebbe can continue doing what he's doing. And the Rebbe getting out of Nazi Poland was just as miraculous. And okay, our Rebbe, we talked about it at length last night. Our Rebbe getting out of France was just miraculous. Okay. Not that people didn't. Very few people did. Some did. Baruch Hashem. Unfortunately, most didn't. Lochein Haisa Geula Ba'if, and therefore the revelation was in such a way Shanes v'teva nischabru yachad, that the miracle and the nature were joined together. Yichud, and this is a unity of Havaya, miraculous, infinite or, and Elohim, finite, natural reality, meaning the godly sources of both. V'yesh leimar shahagilui dar Ein Sof shelamayla misev v'mamala, that this revelation of Or Ein Sof, which is beyond sevev and mamala, b'chibur, brought about by the synthesis of nes, the miracle, shesharsha misevev, v'teva, nature, shesharsha mamala, the source of the nes is sevev, the source of the teva is mamale. Hurak. When does that synthesis happen? Rak shenirgash behem, when it's felt in them, meaning one is sensitive in the realm of mamala and sevev, inyan shalamayla mishneim, when you're aware of something beyond both. What is it that can bring about the synthesis of two opposite realities? Because infinite and finite obviously are two completely opposite realities and can't, if I'm experiencing finite reality, by definition I'm not experiencing infinite, and if I'm experiencing infinite reality, by definition I'm not experiencing finite reality. What happens to the finite reality were there to be a revelation of infinite? It's just bottle, it ceases to exist, it ceases to be having a revealed existence. Right? So too, when that infinite godly light comes down, as we were talking about earlier in the Mayanot, infinite godly light, so to speak, comes down and is somehow processed so that now that light can clothe itself in a vessel and therefore express itself in finitude. So then what happens to the infinite? It ceases to be revealed. It doesn't cease to exist, it's still there. You just don't see it. Right? We've talked about that a number of times in the Mayanot. Right? That doesn't mean infinite doesn't exist, and there's expressions of infinite in the world we live in, right? How many points of space between two finite points of space? An infinite amount of points in space. How many numbers between the number 1.1 and 1.1? An infinite amount of numbers. Okay. So infinite's here, just you don't see it. Because as soon as you write down one of those infinite numbers, 1.8, it's not an infinite number. One of the numbers in that infinite set of numbers, 1.01, so now it's a finite number. It's still part of an infinite set of numbers, but it's finite. You just keep adding another zero, and you just add an infinite amount of zeros, and that's just 0, 1. You also have 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, 5. There's no end, right? And 0, 1.1, 1, 1, and 0, 1, 2, and 1. There's no end. Okay, infinite amount of numbers in between those two numbers, but each of those numbers is a finite number, because the state of revelation here is finite. What's hidden behind the finite? Infinite. Every now and then that infinite is revealed in what you and I call a miracle. Some miracles, and these are not the greatest miracles, they're the most obvious miracles, but they're not the greatest miracles. Some miracles completely destroy the finite. Those are the miracles of the Makkos. Splitting the sea. Complete and total obliteration of natural reality. So on one hand, those miracles are the most fascinating and the most obvious, so therefore they're going to teach people most. But they're not really the greatest miracle. Because I know that when infinite's revealed, finite will be obliterated. What's the most amazing miracle? When infinite and finite can exist together. When there's a miracle that on one hand seems natural, but it's obviously miraculous. Right? That's Purim. Right? Purim is all just politics. Right? And who isn't mentioned in the whole story? God. No mention of God's name in the Megillah. What does anybody with a brain in their head understand? It's all Him. Right? He's orchestrating it all. Seder, but he's not in any revealed way. Who's orchestrating it in a revealed way? Mordechai and Esther are pulling all sorts of political strings. Right? Outsmarted this creep called Haman. And then we fought. Right? It's not that all of a sudden anybody who came to fight us just had turned into a bolt of lightning, hit them, and they disappeared. But all those people outside Lot's house trying to pull his daughters outside, right? So what happened to them all? They're like blown to bits. They come blind, and right, the malachim are wiping them out. Okay, so that's not exactly what happened in Purim. Right? So that's an amazing miracle, but Purim's a greater miracle. So these kind of stories, they're not as revealed, and that's actually what makes them a greater miracle. And there's the synthesis of teva and miracle, which means there's a revelation of something beyond both. Because what is it that can bring about a synthesis of two things? Something more powerful than those two things. They themselves can't integrate into each other because of their own limitations. Infinite realities limit to be infinite, can't integrate into finite, and vice versa. But what if you're beyond both? What can you do? You can cause them to, right? Two north poles of a magnet. If you're stronger than the magnetic force, you just push them together. What's the problem? Right? Naturally, they repel. But not if you're strong enough, which we are, those little magnets you buy in the store. Go to the university, into the physics room where they've got this magnet that could pull a car from a parking lot 3 blocks away. Well, you're not going to be able to overcome the magnetic force of that magnet. Okay. But the little ones we buy so we could, pick up pins and have a good time. And rub the pin against the magnet, and then the pin would become magnetic, and you could pick up a pin with the pin. Come on, you must have done this as kids, right? No? Phones wrecked everybody's experience, huh? No one does anything, no? What?
I just didn't know it worked like that. My grandfather had these, what is it, the cow? The pills they put in a cow. They'd have you swallow these huge magnets.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And we had I didn't know you could rub them and cause this.
Yeah, no, if you rub a pin against the magnet, any piece of metal, but I mean, you rub a pin against the magnet, so you magnetize the pin, and then you take the pin and you put it in the pile of pins, and it'll pick up pins. I remember as a kid just being absolutely astounded by this. We used to do it all the time.
That's a crazy break.
You effectively polarize it, and so that way when it comes near other paper clips, it starts having that influence on that. Over time it wears off. It's not
Yeah, it doesn't last.
But for a short amount of time.
Is this going to turn into a mushroom? Is that what we're going with?
Well, that's the muscle of the ability of you and I to push if you and I take those magnets and we buy in the store with the red end and the silver end, or that's the horseshoe usually, right? Okay, so the two reds repel because north repels north and south repels. We know that, okay. But what if you're strong enough to go like that? Are you? Well, of course you are. I mean, these two things naturally can't have anything to do with each other. But if you're a power beyond them, you can push them together. Okay. Seviv and Mamale have nothing to do with each other. This is infinite reality, this is finite reality. But there is a level of godliness that can push them together so they integrate, and that's Atsu Sorenso. That's what we're saying. It's a level beyond both that can cause them both to be revealed simultaneously. That's the stories about this like in the base times. It's also Purim. 5 more minutes, then I turn into a pumpkin, and I don't like doing that in public. It's embarrassing. V'yesh leimar, shagilui d'rein sev shelamayla miseviv. We're going to do more in our 40-minute class than we usually do in our hour-long class, because I feel restricted, and I'm not wasting your time with stories about my grandchildren or whatever else I do. V'yesh leimar. Well, my grandchildren are cute, you wouldn't believe it. V'yesh leimar, shagilui d'rein sev. The revelation of our Ein Sof Shelamayla Miseviv V'Mamale, that's revealed, that's beyond Seviv, that is revealed, B'chibur Denes, in this synthesis of the two of them in the miracle, Sharsha B'Seviv, and Teva, and nature, Sharsha Mimale. Oh, actually, we read that, I'm sorry. Yeah. Aval, third line. Zeh Teva Atzmai, that which the nature itself, Haya'az, was then ba'oifen, in a way, shaloi helim v'hister alanes, that it didn't conceal the miracle. Because generally, what does nature do? Nature conceals miracles. Right? Nature. Now, when I say miracle, what does that mean? What's the in you and I know it's all a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so why does the sun come up in the morning? Kadosh Baruch Hu is making the sun come up in the morning. But there's this natural thing called the sun coming up in the morning. So according to, I'll be Yiddishkeit. What's the only difference between nace and miracle? Repetition. Mm-hmm. These incredibly godly acts that repeat themselves constantly in an order that you and I can predict, we call that teva. We call that nature. Mm-hmm. Is that any less God than splitting of the Red Sea? No. Mm-hmm. It's very much less obviously God than splitting of the Red Sea. What's wrong?
Translation, I just want to make sure I get the translation. So, Teva's nature, nace is miracle, but we're saying that those are now the same.
Well,
one just occurs more.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all a Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? Everything is happening is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's all happening because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is making it happen. Okay, fine. Hashgacha pratis. The reason that you made the green light is because the Eibusher wanted you to make the green light, and that there are all sorts of things that went into you making the green light. Your keys were were at the close end of the table and not the far end of the table when you went to pick them up, and you didn't drop your keys when you went to lock the door, because if the keys were at the other end and you dropped your keys, you wouldn't have made the green light. It would have been red by the time you got there, 15 seconds later. Okay, now, all of that, you and I will call Hashgacha Pratis. It's all divine providence, but it's all Teva. I mean, I understand, it wasn't a miracle, right? So now, What's the difference between the sun coming up in the morning and splitting of the Red Sea? This one's more God, this one's less God? I would actually say, in all fairness, the sun coming up in the morning is much more miraculous than splitting the Red Sea. There's this ball in the sky that's 93 million miles away that's just perfect in terms of warming. It's a little hot in the Northeast right now, but just perfect for us to walk out in it, and even though we might feel decrepit in the summer, we've got a little color in our face, so we feel we look good, right? Okay, fine. What's the difference between that and the splitting of the Red Sea? They're both absolutely, completely, and totally acts that happen as a result of the will of God. This one repeats itself constantly. This one doesn't. That's called nature. This is called miracle. If the sun were stopped in the middle of the sky, we'd call that a miracle. It happened twice. Happened for Moshe, happened for Yeshua. Okay. So that's called miracle. But that's no less miraculous than the sun continuing in its path, except that's what happens, so we call that teva. Is the light that's being reflected by this any less light than the light that's being reflected by this? No. This is, so to speak, reflecting the infinite aspect of it, and this is, so to speak, reflecting the finite of it. Okay, well that's true. But it's all the same. It's still just light. Physically, it's true. There are different properties in this light from this light to the extent that the blue and yellow photons are not being reflected by this, whereas this is. But it's still just light, isn't it? Oh, good. If we talk another 2 minutes, we'll be late. I like being late. Right? It was in such a way. It didn't hide the miracle. There was teva. Everything was happening naturally. People had the signed papers and all that. And now the Rebbe mentions explicitly, even the opponents of the Alter Rebbe, the people who put him in jail, they remained as powerful as ever. What happened? All of Russia changed when the Alter Rebbe got out of jail? They were the same creeps. And the Soviets all of a sudden stopped being Soviets? No! Stalin killed 20 million people in the Gulag, at least. Right? Solzhenitsyn says 60 million. Okay, find a number in between. What's 10 or 20 million amongst friends? They killed tens of millions of people. The history of socialism and communism. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of people killed. Just tell that to Bernie Sanders next time you see him. Right? Between what Russia killed, Mao killed about 100 million Chinese people. Pol Pot only killed 3 million Cambodians, because how many are there? Right? As soon as the Americans pulled out of Vietnam, Pol Pot took over Cambodia and killed 3 million people. It was a good idea to pull out. That's what everybody on the news said. That's what everybody on the campuses said. That's what everybody said. Sometimes you have to be careful what everybody's saying, because it doesn't necessarily turn out the way you want it to turn out. 3 million Cambodians probably weren't so happy that we left, that the Americans left. They weren't winning the war. It's a disaster. The war. Okay, say that, but they were saving the lives of 3 million Cambodians by being there. Maybe that's worth it. I don't know. Have to make a decision. Even though these people were still menagdim, they were still in opposition to the Alter Rebbe, and they stayed that way, powerfully. What happened to them? They were forced to help. And therefore, because they were so powerful, what were they able to do? Free him. It was after the people with the power that put him in jail, who were the people who had the power to free him, and that's who freed him. Through their power, through the freedom and the redemption. Now that's relative to both the Alter Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe, previous Rebbe. Who put the previous Rebbe in jail? Soviets. Who freed him? Soviets. Was someone else came and freed him? No, same people. Right? They liked him? No, they tormented him after they let him out of jail. Somehow they came to this ridiculous decision, mitzidam. Good for us. This ridiculous decision to free him. And it all happened up B'Tev. You know, the papers were signed, and the decision was made, and this paper was stamped, and it all happened. Why was it happening? Because the Eibishter is leading these morons to do something that's from their point of view, completely against their interests. Baruch Hashem. So there's this miraculous event, but it's happening completely in Tev. So the people who put him in jail are the people who freed him. And they didn't stop being the same people. They were the same people. They hated him. Hu al Yadesha, let's just finish the paragraph. Hu al Yadesha, Malchus Atzma. Malchus itself. What's Malchus? Shoresh HaNivraim, the source of created reality. And that's what allows for creeps like Russians and Soviets to exist. Down there. Because Malchus is broken. And yet what happened? In Malchus, Nizgala Shorsha Amiti, what was revealed? The true source of Malchus, He Shelcha, remember? Right? There's a city that's broken. Vehi Shelcha, really, it's you, it's all from you. I remember the Rebbe made that careful reading of the Medrash. It's yours, meaning it's a place where really you are to be revealed. It's all really you, but you're hiding. Reveal yourself down there. So what was revealed in these stories? What Malchus is really all about. The same Malchus that is responsible for the fact that there's something called the Soviet and something called the Russian. The same Malchus is the place where this miracle took place. While Pizeh Yuvan, based on this, we understand Oid Yosef even more. Akesha, the connection, Vashaychus, and the relevance. The Gula, from this Gula, La Mizmor Tefillah Lamesha. To the Mizmor Tefillah Lamesha, they both said it. Tefillas Osher. The Indian Tefillas Osher, what is Tefillas Osher? Who? Medina Planis Gazor Shetibani. Right? There's a place of brokenness. There's a Rebbe in jail. Fix it. Hamshachas Gili Atzmus Arein Seif Malchus. The drawing down of Atzmus Arein Seif in Malchus. Not the destruction of Malchus. Right? But a level drawn down into Malchus that reveals the true source of Malchus, which is Elokus. So what's the true source of nature? So if you look at nature right, it's not hiding the Eibishter, it's just revealing the Eibishter. It's revealing him in a way that it's hard, we don't see it the way we see tables. But hopefully with our spiritual eyes, we see godliness in everything that's happening. So hopefully if you're driving along and you make the green light, you can whisper to yourself, thank you, Eibishter. Because he's the one that made the light go red. And if he makes it go red, okay, I'll take this pacifical. This is what you want? You want me to, instead of keeping the light green so I can make it to work on time, you decided you're going to make it red, and therefore, what's my job now? I have to be pacific, even though I'm a little tense. No, don't be tense. Just be pacific. Famous Moshe, I heard they leave you with this Moshe, I'll say it fast. That you're on your way to teach some class because you're such a big star and everybody's waiting for you to elevate them with your words of wisdom. Or it might just be you're going to the class because you want to learn all sorts of good stuff. And on the way you get a flat tire and you can't make it to the class. And if you're the teacher of the class in the old days, there's no cell phone. You can't even tell them that you're not making it, right? Which is the worst part of it. Right? You're like, and they just sit there. And then finally, after half an hour, they're like, I guess it's not coming. Maybe after you fix the tire, or you might be lucky there's a payphone near where you put the tire blew, but maybe not. Okay. Cell phones, at least you can tell them I'm not coming. Okay. So your tire blew. So you thought your relationship with God was going to that class and learning Torah, or giving that class to help other people learn Torah. That's what you thought. God, your tire just went flat. We call that a shkaka pratis, divine providence. So now what's your relationship with God? Change the flat tire to simcha. Sing a niggin while you're changing the tire, because that's what he wants from you now. You thought he wanted you to go teach the class or listen to the class. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to think. But that's obviously not what he wants from me right now. He wants something else from me. What is it? Change the flat tire. I realize there's as much him in the flat tire as there is in the class you're about to go to. It's all him. That's a real good. Because that can be very frustrating. Okay. Change the flat tire. It's hopefully not on an incline. Once I had a flat tire and there was no end to the hill I was on. I couldn't get my car up on the jack. Because every time I lifted it up, it would fall down because of the weight of the hill. I tried about 5 times. A guy pulled up with another jack. He had 2 jacks. Didn't work. All of a sudden, a guy pulls up who just happens to have, in the back of his car, a professional chilutz kit, which is, chilutz means to extract people from dangerous situations. And one of the things he has is a hydraulic jack. Well, that was that. About 35 seconds, he put it under the car, connected it to his exhaust pipe. Okay. Well, I changed the tire in a minute and a half. He had also tools. I was, busy, stepping on the thing, right? Okay, well, I changed enough tires. It's not you can change a tire in 10 minutes, but okay. So this guy, right, took one, put it on. That wasn't God helping me? Just happened to be that this guy showed up. That was my last flat tire. May I have no more in the near future. My wife usually gets the flat tires, but she always gets lucky. I don't know, she's amazing. She calls me up, says the tire's flat. I said, oh. She said, where are you? Can you come and help me change it? So then I said, okay, I can't come right now. I can come in 10 minutes. I'll leave here in 10 minutes and I'll come. Fine. So then I get a call 5 minutes later. It's all right. What happened? 2 soldiers walked by and they changed the tire. 2 soldiers see some Jewish lady standing next to a car with a flat tire. What are they going to do? Change it, right? So this happened to her. This must have happened 10 times. I got 10, 5 times to my wife. Every time she has a flat tire, she calls me up. 2 soldiers came and changed my tire. Remember, I had a flat tire outside. I was driving home from yeshiva, and I got a flat tire, and I pulled off onto a side street, and I'm changing it. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon, so it was lunchtime in yeshivas, and it was near where the old yeshiva was, which was from there. Bochum were walking by. Every single Sephardi Bochum asked if he could help me. Not one Ashkenazi Bochum asked if he could help me. It was fascinating. You can tell. All the Sephardim, somehow in that Sephardi yeshiva, there's an education that includes the notion of respect for other people, and everyone said Kvod HaRav, which is really embarrassing, but Kvod HaRav. The Ashkenazim just looked and walked by. Something wrong in that education, that's for sure. All the Sephardim. Every one of them. I said no, I didn't need their help. I had already had the car up. But of course, as soon as I remember that very, very, very well, because I took out my spare, put it on, let it down, the spare was flat. That was very disappointing. You need when you have that, you always need this in your car. And I went to get it right away. The spray. Yeah, they just need the spray. So I destroyed the tire. I had to drive home. I had to drive to the closest place, which was about a 7-8 minute drive on this tire. I shredded the tire completely.
On the spare or on the...
On the spare. I just shredded the spare. So it was already on, but I was going to change back to the... I shredded the spare. And of course, Israelis are all busy. Every traffic light, they're giving me instructions. Do you know that you have a flag? Of course I know. Do you know the racket that it's making? I mean, the noise. I'm driving. Oh, please get me there. And I finally got to the place where I could change it. And they said, boy, you did a job in this. So I explained what I thought. Okay, well, that's the way it goes. And they had that spray. I said, can I buy some spray? Yeah, keep some spray in your car. That was so disappointing. He'll let the car down. The spray was flat.
I've had many.
What?
I've had too many. Like
flat tires?
Oh, nails. And now my car, the sensor broke. So now I'll be driving, freaking out, thinking, oh my God, I have a nail in my tire. Let me pull over. Let me go to a shop in the middle of it.
Do you have a newer or older car?
Newer, older. 2014 that I've been driving since 2016.
Okay, no, but so generally older cars get more flat tires because we tend not to be as careful about the tires because the car itself is old. It's always funny watching people who don't know how to change a flat tire, watch them try to change a flat tire.
A lot of the time they don't, the tools they give you is bad. Like I find the shop will go and tighten it with the hydraulic thing. So when you go to take it off manually with that little tool, that won't take it off. And sometimes even the nicer tool won't take it off if they tighten it too much.
Yeah, but usually what you have to do is jump on it. I mean,
And then you end up
just
sometimes
jump on it.
busting some
But
stuff
you have to make sure that meaning what do most people do? They lift up the car first. Well, then you can't get the tire off. The tire has to be in the ground, so there's you can force the bolt, right? So first you loosen the bolt, then pick up the tire. Now, if you haven't changed the tire, you're not going to think about that. So then you start trying to pull in the tires, spinning around. Well, okay, all right, so you let it down. Everybody's made that mistake once. So no, but I just always remember jumping on it. That's what you have to do. First you try without jumping, but if it was really stuck, you just jump and that little you hear, okay, that's good. That first is all you need, and then everything will work.
Maybe we don't have any more of these.
May we never have more flat tires. There's not going to be much machine. There won't be flat tires. It'll be one of the things the English will rid us of. There'll be other things more important, but flat tires are also the rest.
I've also heard some people have a mallet in their car. Rubber mallets to taco.
That's a good idea, right? Or beat up the guys trying to steal your car. Oh, wait, maybe I should just left this on here.
Bangladeshis are enjoying the commentary.
I see it. It's programmed to stay on an hour. There, you get sorry people who watch this that you just heard all this nonsense about flat tires at the end, but that's the way it goes. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you here at Mashiach. I guess I could actually take